here at the N.I.F.E. FieroCast. This is a seasonal podcast that we will be doing between October and March. It's just one of those things where it's a little slower on our end for the show season, so we're going to try to keep everything active and going. So we decided to come up with a FieroCast, and I just want to welcome everybody and introduce today our guest is Jim Hallman. He is the founder and president of the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts. We're going to talk briefly about N.I.F.E, when it was started back in October of 91. How it has grown over the many years, how it's one of, I consider, the world's largest Fiero-based car clubs. The club itself covers 47 states and 5 countries, so that's impressive overall. We're going to find, you can find these podcasts on our website at FieroFocus.com under the video library, but we're also going to soon have our own hosting podcast where you can subscribe to the page, and every time we post a podcast, you'll be able to get notified and listen to it right away. So some of the future podcasts that we're going to be doing over the next couple months here, we're going to have a group of original Fiero owners. That's either first owners, which are the original, anybody who was given a Fiero that was, in essence, passed down to them from family members. We still consider them original Fiero owners because it was part of the family. We're going to talk with the ladies of N.I.F.E. We're going to have some tech discussions. We're going to go in detail of what the enthusiast guide for the Pontiac Fiero is. That's a publication that the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts have put together. Great piece of reading material, very detailed if you ever want to get your Fiero back to the original restoration of when it rolled off the assembly line. We'll also later on talk to a couple of members of the Midwest Fiero clubs, why it was started, how it's organized, and what it does to help promote the Fiero. And there's going to be many other ones that we're going to come up with as well. So, but again, you can find this on FieroFocus.com. We'll also have information about it in the Fiero Focus magazine and on our Facebook pages at N.I.F.E Club and our second one, which is at Fiorama. So, all right, let's get started here. Jim, welcome. And what's the main reason you purchased a Fiero? I think that's everybody's big question.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks for inviting me today to the podcast. Appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
The main reason I purchased a Fiero, that's an interesting question. It was actually back in April of 1989 when I was just about to graduate college. I went to Valparaiso University, graduating in May, and I was part owner with my brother of a 1976 Pontiac Grand Prix that was gold in color, and we had it repainted a few years before '89, so it was really looking like a sharp car. It had some rare T-tops on it, and was pushing probably about 120,000 miles. And just getting out of college, you kind of have that itch for a brand new car. Couldn't afford a brand new Fiero at the time, but I realized that I could purchase a used Fiero, and obviously being in 1989, getting like an '86 3-year-old Fiero, that's really not that used. So it was about probably about late April of '89 that looking through all the ads at the time, I found a '86 Gold SE 4-speed at a used car lot. It was actually a Ford dealer, believe it or not. It had, I think, roughly about 25 to 27,000 miles on it. I remember the price was about $6,500.
That was a lot back then, too.
Yeah, it was only a 3-year-old car back then, and the list price on a '86 SE was probably around 11,000, 12,000 or something like that.
I remember when I got mine in my '87 in '97, I paid $3,500 for it, and I was fresh out of high school, and I had to take out a car loan for that, and my dad had to co-sign it. So
Yeah, yep. So I didn't I guess I did take out a car loan. It was with my parents, though. Luckily, the parents were helping me get off on the right foot right out of college. So, but the interesting story behind that is there was there were two gold Fiero SEs on this used car dealer lot. One of them was an '87, and the other one was an '86. And it was kind of like, well, which one should you get? The '87 was probably, a few $100s more, and I think the mileage was a little bit less. I'm like, well, which one should I choose? And I hopped in the '87, and that was a 5-speed. Yeah, that would have been a 5-speed. And I remember hopping in the car, and I threw it into gear, and the car didn't move. I'm like, well, that's kind of a sign right off the bat there. I don't know if I want to go with this one. So my dad and I hopped in the '86 and took it around for a nice little test drive. And at that time, I think we bought it on that same night. We looked at it and decided that that was the car for me. And I was, a young 20-year-old something kid, and I had a '86 gold Fiero SE. So I was happy as a clam with that.
when did you wind up getting the '88?
The '88 was back in, let's see, that would have been May. Actually, it was April also, April of 1990, back when I purchased the white '88 that I still own today. And that one has an interesting story behind it, too. I was looking around for an '88 GT, and after I really got into the Fiero after buying the '86, I obviously read a lot about the '88s and how it was quite a bit different than the '86s and the all-new suspension for '88. And at that time, I was looking for a car that I could use as a show car. So the '88 that I was looking for had to have, decent mileage and obviously original condition. And, being the 1990s, the car would only be about 2 years old, so the mileage wouldn't be that much of a concern. But as I was looking around, I kind of honed in on a yellow '88 GT that I wanted, but the car was unfortunately down in North Carolina, and Mom, being the wise woman that she is, she said, you're not buying a car from North Carolina. So I kind of shot that idea down, but I continued to look around, look at all the ads in the newspapers and such, and I told my brother about it at a family function. I think it was Mother's Day of 1990. And interesting, he called me the next day and said, Jim, you're not going to believe it. Up here in Rockford, there's an '88 Fiero GT for sale, listing for about $10,000. It had 14,000 miles on it. It had the gray leather interior, and so I got the phone number from my brother, and that following Saturday, I drove out there to take a look at it, and obviously inspected from top to bottom, and decided that was the Fiero to buy for me.
Did you know what to look for at that time, as far as when you said inspecting it? What were you looking at, if there was any imperfections or anything like that? Or did you already have in your head that this was going to be a car that I want pristine, or was it just mechanical you were looking at?
Yeah, at that time, being a 2-year-old car, I was basically just looking for body damage, seeing if there was any body damage or repainting on it. And, that was, really with 14,000 miles on it, that was about all that you saw. I do remember one of the things that I looked closely at was the car had the Z-Bart undercoating across the entire bottom of the car, and I'm like, well, I'm sure I could take all that off, but it took, kind of on and off a couple of years to get all that stuff out of the wheel wells and off of the bottom of the body panels and, everywhere else I could find it. But after I did that, it actually, in the long term, it protected a lot of that stuff because it had that coating on it. So the wheel well liners were in pristine condition as soon as you removed all the coating off of it. So,
I've heard that after it got settled in with the car and everything like that, you actually used it at your wedding.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. The white '88 was again my show car, so I was just driving that very minimally to car shows and other special club events at the time. But I decided that rather than having someone else drive me around, I wanted to take my wife Jenny out and do our first drive as husband and wife in the Fiero, and that's one of another special thing that that we did in that car. And obviously it has a lot of history with me, and I obviously know I can't take it with me, but I'll have it until I don't need it anymore.
That's just one of the things that we were talking about at Fiorama this year, is that a lot of people don't know that there's a lot of stories behind these cars too. And that not just for the Fiero community, but any kind of car, that older car, Chevelle, Firebird, Camaro, Trans Am, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's always strong stories behind them, and I think we lose a lot of that too when at shows, where people just look at the cars and say, "Ooh, that's an awesome looking car," but when you sit there or you walk around and you talk to the owners, there's some pretty interesting stories, and just like that, they're memories, and they hold with you, and it's just every story is unique, and that's what I think makes the story of the cars that more personal too.
Correct. Yeah. One of the other interesting things about me getting involved with the Fiero was up until that time when I bought the first one back in April of '89, I was known in the local model car club. It was called the Lake Michigan Model Car Club. I was known as the Corvette Kid because I only built Corvette models. And, kind of around that same time of April of '89, looking for a car, obviously a Corvette was kind of out of the budget. I figured, well, this Fiero's been pretty neat, and I had been following it since it was introduced in '84, and like, well, we'll give that a try, and have that around for a little while and enjoy that, and then get a Corvette later on. And as soon as I sat foot in that Fiero, I have never ever thought about driving a Corvette ever again.
Do you think that saying that people would say many years ago, that the Fiero was the poor man's Corvette?
That was again, that was very true at that time, because for $6,500 you could get a 2-year-old Fiero, or you could probably double that price for a 2-year-old Corvette. So yep.
Yeah. What were some of the things prior to owning the Fiero? Like what other kind of cars did you have, or what was your mindset before getting the car? I know you said you were in the model cars for building Corvettes, but what was your daily driver before the Fiero?
The daily driver was the gold 76 Pontiac Grand Prix, which my brother and I decided to buy it together. My brother Paul was in need of a car, and he didn't have enough money to put towards a nicer car. So we came up with the idea that, well, if I put some money together with it and he put some money together with it, we can get a better car. And then he could drive it initially when he was off to college, and then I could have it during the summertime. And then when he graduated, which was like a year or two after we bought the car, then the car would be mine. So that was the first car, other than the family cars, the wonderful Ford Mavericks and the Ford Galaxy 500 tanks and stuff like that. It was really just the 76 Grand Prix, and then the Fieros after that.
So going from a big car down to a little small car.
Yep. That was quite a bit different. A big car too, a 76 Grand Prix. I mean, that weighed close to probably 3,500 to 4,000 pounds, and this Fiero at 2,500 pounds.
Yeah.
That was quite a bit different, sitting low to the ground.
I always say they're nice little go-karts, and it's almost like as I'm getting older. 20 years ago, it was easy to get in and out, but now it's like I actually just fall out of the car just to get out.
Yep.
What was your mindset when you're in the car, you've got the car, you're driving, and what were you thinking? Like, man, I got to find other people that have this car like me, or were you just kind of driving around and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's more of these. I wonder if what's going on, or what was your thinking of joining the club or even building your own club?
Yeah, going back to that, there was quite a few people that I interacted with, either at my job at the time, some of the suppliers I remember that I was dealing with, and you just start talking about the Fiero, and I remember one of our initial club members, he said, "Well, I got a Fiero too," and he's like, "Well, that's kind of neat," So we started talking about the Fieros as he would take me out to lunch and during business hours and stuff like that, and so I just started keeping a list of all these people that I was interacting with that had a Fiero, and I think that the real kicker where everything kind of turned around for me was when I was out of work, and I think it was the fall of 1990, a few months after I bought the white '88. I was, riding my bike through the forest preserve, just kind of passing time, waiting for job interviews because, you didn't have all the wonderful internet at that time. And I came out of the forest preserve, and I came across a gentleman that was photographing a yellow '88 GT. And you gotta be kidding me. Here I am just riding in the forest preserve, and all of a sudden I come across someone else with a Fiero that is taking photographs of it. Obviously, he must be an enthusiast as well. So after talking to him, it turns out that the Fiero that he bought was the one that I had wanted to buy that was down in North Carolina. And this other guy actually came up and shipped it up here from North Carolina. So this was literally the car moved from North Carolina to Hinsdale, Illinois, which was right next to the town I was living in at the time. And I started to converse with him, and he was one of the other founders of our club. So I just kept interacting with all these different people, and eventually I came up with the idea after being in some of the other Fiero clubs that hey, why not start our own? There's obviously a lot of people around here that are interested in the Fiero, and why not see if they wanted to band together and see if we can have some fun together.
How small of a world is that, though, that the exact same one that you were looking at winds up in the parking lot exactly where you were
at exactly the same time? I mean, that to me, looking back on my life so far, I mean, that is there's defining moments of things that happen, and that was one of the defining moments of starting a Fiero club.
Yeah,
I mean, that had to be.
I would be like, holy crap! I'm like. I was looking at it's to have that happen, and I would just be like, meant to be kind of thing.
And thinking back, you have to look at the time period also. I mean, the early '90s. I mean, there was no internet, there was nothing. I mean, you were looking at either advertisements in newspapers or Hemmings Motor News, and you're just kind of looking around for this right Fiero, and being 2 years old, there's not a lot of people that were selling them because they were still new cars.
But for it to end up in Illinois, I mean, it could have gone to the south, out west.
Could have gone anywhere.
Yeah, wow.
So, but yeah, that was one of the I think that was the first defining moment that there's something going on here, and there's a need for a Fiero club in the Chicago area.
What was the actual deciding point that you said, all right, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it, and then that official start date of the club?
Yeah. So leading up to that, there was at the time there was a Fiero Owners Club of America, which was based out in California. A gentleman by the name of Phil Huff was running that organization, and at that time, that was the largest Fiero club around, and just kind of looking through their magazine, I started seeing all these other people that were in Illinois. Some of the names, they had just the name listed, and then it said, whatever, Elgin, Illinois, or Schaumburg, Illinois, stuff like that, and you just start wondering, can I get a list of all the Illinois members? And so I approached Phil Huff about that, and he said, yeah, I can give you a list of all the Illinois members. And I gave him, kind of the intention that I wanted to start a Fiero club in Illinois. So he gave me this list of all the names of the members that were of his club in Illinois. And I just started, again, at the time, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have email. I just started, drafting a letter. So I got this this mailing list, and I just sent all these people a letter saying, "Hey, are you interested in starting a Fiero club in Illinois? If you are, let me know. Send a note back to me, and once we have some more details firmed up about the club, I'll just go ahead and let you know and keep you on a rolling list of people that are interested." So this list started to grow and grow, and eventually we decided upon a date and a location. The location was one of our founding members in Elgin, gentleman by the name of Jim Corbin, who was a past president of the Auburn Court Duesenberg Museum, which again, that was probably a second defining moment to have someone that was very involved with a car club and very knowledgeable about a car club and how it should function and how it needs to take place, and originating it and starting it off from scratch. So we decided on a date, October 19th of 1991, that we wanted to start a Fiero club. And again, this second letter went out to everybody that expressed interest in being a part of this Fiero club, and we had, I think, 12 or 15, I think it was 12 people show up on October 19th of 1991, and that's when we decided to form the club.
Interesting. You brought up a word that kind of caught me, rolling. And when you mean rolling, it kind of corresponds with what we're doing now, because we do have almost 400 members. On paper, we have 400 members. But overall, you have a rolling tally of members, which is almost approaching 2,000.
Yeah, yep.
That I think is impressive. That over, 30 years? Going on 30 years?
Yeah, we've had over 2,000 people come and go, and we still have, at this point, 370 some odd that are still interested.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just think that's impressive, because it's nice to see that, because when I joined in 97, I think I was member 471. And now we're up to, like I said, approaching 2,000. So that's what I think is interesting. It's just that rolling still plays into it today.
Yeah.
And it really shows that people do enjoy what the club has to offer 30 years later.
Yeah, and you think of that, the rolling number of it increasing. I have to say that most of those people that did not renew, either because they sold their car or they moved on to something different. I mean, it's not like there was disappointment in the club. It's not like, this isn't for me. I'm guessing probably 75% or more just because, they sold the car or something happened to the car.
Yep. Once you just started to start the club, were you nervous? How did it affect you? What were the next steps after that initial 12 members showed up to that meeting? The day started out as kind of just it was planned by me to be a kind of how are we going to start this thing? So we all had a little bit of social kind of get together in the morning, and then if I remember right, I think we had some type of a mini lunch or something provided, and then in the afternoon we kind of got down to business as far as how serious are we about doing this? So at that time we came up with the name of the club, which was Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts, and there was some discussion about that. I remember one of our founding members, Rich Benani, saying, "Wow, enthusiasts, there's a lot of words in that." Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts. I'm like, well, I see ourselves as, throughout all the people that I've met so far, all the people that I've interacted with, they're more than just members. They're more than just Fiero owners. Every single person that I had met up to that date was enthusiastic about their Fiero. I mean, at that time, again, that's when all the stories started rolling out about, Fieros and engine fires and da-da-da-da, and all this negative publicity. And, these people are, I mean, if you owned a Fiero back then, wow, you love that car. Right.
I mean, you were enthusiastic about that car.
That's one thing that I kind of, the way you just explained that is the joy of having it, the fun of having it. And was there ever any question of incorporating the word club, or what was, because a lot, you got the Camaro Club, the Corvette Club, they're all clubs. Why didn't you guys incorporate club into it? Just because it was more of the fun of being around each other?
Yeah, I think the not incorporating that word was just because after I mentioned this to all the people that were present that day, you know what, I think they came back and said, you're right. I mean, we're more than just a gathering of people. We're enthusiastic about the car, and we want to convey that to the community, that we're more than just the Northern Illinois Fiero Club or the Illinois Fiero Club. I mean, we're a group of enthusiastic people, and we're enthusiastic about the Fiero. So I think that was kind of the main driver behind that.
When you and the members decided the official name, the official start, do you refer to them now as the founding partners, the founding members? Are they still around?
There's as far as I know, there's only two. There's a total of three of us. There's two others. There's Rich Benanti and Paul Ketterer, who actually joined us a few years back at our 25th anniversary of N.I.F.E. So there's only three of us, and we treat them as really founding members, I guess officially we would call them, or just honorary lifetime members.
I know Rich is in Arizona, and Paul is in Georgia. Do you still? Let me take that back. I know everybody really stays in good contact with Rich. What about Paul? I know he came up to Fiorama a couple of years ago, but was that the first time in years that he's partook in an event?
No, Paul's actually come up quite a few times. He usually comes up for Fiorama. I think he's probably made about 3 or 4 since he moved to Georgia. So he's still very active in the Fiero community.
He's still active.
Yep, he still owns. I think at this point he might have dropped down to 1, but I think at one point he still had 2 Fieros up to a certain point, not too long ago. But I know he participates in a lot of shows and shows off his Fiero down in Georgia. So I know he's still very active as a Fiero enthusiast.
What was your envision in starting and the footprint did you have on the meetings and the events when everything after that initial gathering? Did you guys sit down and say, okay, let's do this monthly, let's do it bi-monthly, once a year?
What the original plan was, and this kind of helped kind of lay everything out as far as what has evolved to this day, is we had planned to do a club activity 1 month, and then the opposing month we would have our newsletter, which was called Fiero Focus, published. So that every month you would have something going on. Either you would be participating in a club meeting of some kind, and a lot of the initial club meetings were with guest speakers talking about oil additives and mechanical issues and stuff like that. So we had a club meeting 1 month, and then the next meeting Fiero Focus magazine would come out, or actually at the time Fiero Focus newsletter. And just a little bit a story behind Fiero Focus. One of our founding members, Bruce Clevin, when I posed the question about, okay, so what's going to be the name of our club newsletter, and he was actually, and I believe he still is, a photographer, and he goes, well, being a photographer, why don't we call it Focused, because it's focused on the Fiero. So at that point we coined the title of the club on that first day, and we also coined Fiero Focus as our newsletter's name at that time.
Interesting.
So
yeah, because you got the club name, and then it's funny because the website is mimicked off the magazine.
Mhm.
So you would think, like, okay, I'm going to go to the internet, or I'm going to type in something and say I'm going to type in Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts.com. That's a long website. So I actually kind of like it being short because it's just Fiero focus.
Yep.
Boom, there.
And
all
that
done.
draws everything together. I mean, like you
Exactly.
said, it's modeled after the magazine, so it kind of all ties in together, and it's very short. And at this point, almost 30 years later, everybody knows Fiero Focus is our magazine.
Yeah. What do you remember what your very first club meeting was about?
I was trying to look back into that, and I believe the first meeting was in like February of 1992, and I think it was really the first few meetings were kind of just laying out some of the groundwork for the club, such as it was more club business oriented, meaning that like at that club meeting we were still talking about what's our club logo going to look like, and what's just kind of other formalities about the club and how it's going to function, and just kind of getting to know one another. So it wasn't until probably late 92 or maybe even 93 where we started to have more formalized meetings. And I planned it out early on that I didn't want to have the club meetings be all business oriented, whereas a lot of meetings that you go to, you have the treasurer's report, you have the secretary's report, you have the president's report, and to me, I never really got enthused about meetings like that. So I knew that if I was gonna be in charge of this club, I didn't want to have meetings like that. So I had to come up with different ideas about, okay, so what are we going to talk about if we're not going to do if everybody's not going to give their report at these meetings. And that's when I started thinking about some of the other people that we're interacting with, and that's when some of the other ideas came up about different guest speakers that we could have at club meetings, and different members that have done different things to their car, and just kind of talk about different aspects like that during the meetings.
Fun. Knowing what you know now and going back 30, 35 years, what was your overall thought process? Did you think, all right, we're going balls to the wall, this thing's going to go for many, many, many years? Or did you have that thing where it's like, all right, we got started, we'll see where it goes, takes us in a couple of years?
Mm-hmm. I remember the first meeting, again, one of our founding members, Jim Corbin, seeing as he was the past president of the Auburn Court Duesenberg Club, I thought, boy, he'd be really kind of a shoo-in for being the first president of the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts. So during that first meeting, I kind of posed that question. I said, well, hey, you're president, would you mind taking over? And he kind of looked at me and said, no, I think you're the younger guy. I think you need to take care of that. You got a lot of, he could tell all the enthusiasm that I had for this, and I don't think, looking back, he didn't want me to be deterred of of that enthusiasm by taking a second position. He wanted me to be in charge of this thing. And one of the interesting other things about Jim Corbin was he's the kind of the mentor that I continue to have, some of his sayings pop in my head. And during that first meeting, Jim had said, the most important thing about any car club is its newsletter. And the reason for that is because that is the only way to reach every single club member in the club.
And that shows, because we're 47 states strong,
Mm-hmm.
and we're in Canada, I think Germany, Japan, I think Mark has even said Australia. Yeah.
And to think, we have, we have club members in almost all 50 states. I mean, it started out as the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts, and that's, the title that we've kept because obviously living in Illinois, we have to have our club meetings and club events in Illinois, but I think just because of our consistency and our, reliability of providing the Fiero public with what they want and what we are telling them we're going to give them,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why we have so many consistent club members.
Yeah, And I agree. And same goes for the Fiero store. So we all know how hard it is to find those Fiero parts. We also know as the years go by, finding parts isn't getting any easier. So the big box stores we know will never make those Fiero parts because the community itself is just way too small. This is why we need support, the companies that support us. For nearly 30 years, the Fiero store has sponsored our club events, provided free technical support, and produced well over 150 exclusive parts that no big box store would even offer or consider. So the next time you need parts, head over to FieroStore.com and browse through the thousands of products that are specifically designed for your Fiero. That's FieroStore.com, the world's largest source of Fiero parts. All right, so thank you for the Fiero store, and support them in any which way you can. They're wonderful. All right, so now that you have the you have the name and everything is up and running, was it mandatory to get it incorporated, or was that just something that you had to do because of the state of Illinois?
It was something that it started out as at one of our club meetings. Our first activity director, Paul Ketterer, brought in an article about how a car club was sued because they attended a car function and somebody got hurt and somebody's car got hurt, and the club was kind of considered at fault. And when Paul brought this article to us, we started talking, well, it's obviously we don't want to have liability issues, and should something happen, which obviously we don't want to have happen, but should something happen, and being out in the public as much, obviously we're kind of opening ourselves up to possibilities of liability issues.
Is the insurance, or is that covered in the incorporation, or is that something that if you had car insurance, you could go to your insurance company and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what we're looking at, can you cover us?
Mm-hmm. For the club itself, if somebody were to sue the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts, that is its own entity, so it doesn't really represent the individuals of the club. Those are all individuals themselves representing the club. So if somebody decides to sue the name, they're only going to get $1,000 in assets of the club. So again, it was really just for liability of all of the organizers, the activity directors, the club president. It was liability protection for the individuals.
So that kind of brings up a good point, because if you didn't have that coverage and somebody was to sue, every member in your club could lose their car. Yep. They could lose.
Yeah, depending upon the extent of the damage and stuff like that. I mean, that could be detrimental to a lot of people. So that's why we decided, based on this article and then some involvement from Paul Vargas, one of our other very active members, that was kind of the linchpin to get us into, okay, it's time to have Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts incorporated as its own entity, so that the club was protected and then the officers were protected. And it was up to each of the officers to have their own personal liability insurance through their homeowner's policy or something else, but at least the club itself was protected and incorporated back in 1994.
What were some of the next steps then after incorporation? Did you have to build a board of directors or officers and show them that you were a true entity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to, every year we have to file a payment to the state of Illinois to continue our incorporation, and it lists on that who our club president is, the address of the president. It lists our secretary and who the secretary is. So it kind of does real basic formalities, but one of the requirements of the club is that we have to have at least one board meeting per year. So every September we have a quote unquote portion of one of our regular board meetings where I ask, are we going to continue with the club, and are you going to, each of the board members I ask, are you going to continue with your position for the next year? And that kind of suffices for our at least one annual board meeting of the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts.
I know board members have come and gone. Has anybody ever said, no, don't continue the club?
Nope, not to date, and I don't anticipate any coming soon.
What were some of the next steps after everybody was settled in their positions? Who decided on, all right, we need an official logo, and who was the designer of that back then?
Yeah, another interesting, fun story was, during one of these initial club meetings, we decided, okay, it's time to have club T-shirts like all the rest of the clubs. We had to have club T-shirts. So we had talked about, so obviously if we need T-shirts, we need to have a logo. So, we had asked at one of our club meetings for people to bring their ideas as far as what should be incorporated into that logo. And one of our first vice presidents, Rich Benanti, came with a line art drawing of a Pegasus. And the story behind that is that one of his daughters had one of the My Pretty Pony dolls at the time, back in the early 1990s. And the My Pretty Pony figurine was just kind of sitting on the table, and the way Rich was looking at it, he's like, you know what? We could easily turn that into a Pegasus. So we started, sketching out this line art, and he added wings to the doll, and he brought that to one of our club meetings, and we actually still incorporate that same line art drawing Pegasus into a portion of our logo as we have it today. So that was the origination of the Pegasus, and then obviously we thought, okay, we're the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts, so we had to have the state of Illinois in there. So we had a Pegasus in the state, and it just kind of didn't look right. It needed something else, so we added this the swoosh underneath, going across the state and then underneath the Pegasus to kind of give it some depth. And that's how our first logo of the club, which again still continues today, was formed.
Yeah, the style has changed, but the original still exists in the main logo, which is really cool. Once you get everything going, did you concentrate in one area to expand, or did you just kind of put it out there and say, all right, anybody in Illinois can join, or if you have a Fiero within the United States, you can join? What was your basis behind on the expansion?
Yeah, the expansion that we were focusing on primarily was just in the state of Illinois. Reason being is at that time, the Fiero was still a very popular daily driver car, and I believe almost 48, maybe if not all 50 states in the Union already had their own Fiero club. So there was really not a need to grow nationally. There was more just a need to satisfy the excitement of Fiero owners living in Illinois.
That would be an actually interesting story for later on. One is going back and looking at all those different clubs and just kind of getting a history of those two, because to have 48 Fiero clubs within each state, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, there was, the figure over 310,000 Fieros were produced, and there was a lot of them around, and people were enthusiastic about them in the early 90s, and they were a very popular new and used car at the time when they came out. So the one of the things about trying to grow the club, we really just spent a lot of time just as we would meet people, we would pass out a business card, because again, you have to figure this was the early 90s. We had no internet, we had no email. The only way to correspond was either telephone or in the mail. So as you would see Fieros around, you would leave a business card on them, and they'd call you back, and you would tell them about the club, and then you would offer your suggestions to join the club, and 9 times out of 10 they say, yeah, sure, I'll do it for whatever the dues were, $10 or $12 a year. So that's really how we grew, and we really just focused in on Fiero owners in Illinois.
And I remember when I first heard about the club, my dad was reading the Chicago Tribune, and this was probably about a month or so after I got the car, and he clipped it off and put it on my desk, And I looked at it and I'm like, all right. And then I did some research, and I think I called whatever number was on that ad at the time. I don't know if it was your number or Paul's number, but called me back right away, told me everything, and I was like, all right, this sounds awesome. And I signed up, and 22 years later, I'm still there.
Yeah. One of the biggest growth spurts that we had, gosh, I'm trying to figure out when this occurred, probably 95 to 97 time frame. At that time, you could still purchase a database listing from the state of Illinois Secretary of State's office, where you could kind of ask them to hone in on all of the Fiero owners within a certain county. I think we had to do it by county. So, and we had to, I think, pay a small amount, not a huge exorbitant amount, but I think we had to pay some money for this mailing list. And we decided to do it for, the two most popular counties in Northern Illinois, which was Kane County and Cook County, Cook County and DuPage County. So we paid for these two listings, and I think we got a listing of, probably about maybe 400 to 500 Fiero owners in those two counties. So as a club function, we got a whole bunch of people together, and we said, okay, we're just going to do a mass mailing to all of these people and see if they're interested in joining our club. So we met at one of the libraries, and we had, I don't know, probably 8 or 10 people, and we all just, we had this form letter. We were just stuffing this letter in an envelope and putting these mailing address labels on it and putting a stamp on it, and we just kind of sent them all out and see what happened. And I think within a matter of about 6 months or so, we went from probably about 100 club members to probably easily over 250 just from that. So that was kind of our first big growth spurt of just, again, we're just trying to get the word out that a club exists, because there was no other way back then to do that.
And especially to jump that high, that's awesome. What made, at the time, what do you think made the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts differ from some of the other clubs out there? More structure, or?
I think just at the time, again, because there were so many other Fiero clubs, it was really just the location. I mean, we were in Illinois, and I had kind of purposely set it up because Illinois is such a long state that I said, you know what, we're just going to focus in on Northern Illinois. If somebody down south wants to handle the central and southern portions, we're not sure how populated those parts of the states were with Fieros, but we figured, there's a heavy concentration of people up in Northern Illinois, so we just focused in on growing our club in that area. And, there was no need at that point to try and solicit people from Minnesota, because there was a Minnesota club, or Wisconsin because there was a Wisconsin club, or Michigan. I mean, all the rest of these states already had a Fiero club, and, we were all kind of doing the same thing, just going to car shows and having a newsletter and kind of providing some technical information. So there was, not a great need to expand beyond our Northern Illinois boundaries.
You bring up a good point about, at the time, the newsletter. When did you decide to really get that going? Once the membership started growing, or?
Yeah, the newsletter was really just a 4 or 5 sheets that were stapled together, folded in half, just like every other newsletter at the time. And it was thanks to Paul Vargas, who was our membership director at the time, and he decided to kind of really push Fiero Focus and turn it into a true magazine that it needed to be. And thanks to him, he is really the one single person, I'd have to say, that really turned Fiero Focus from a newsletter to a magazine. And we kind of focused in on how to expand it and come up with front covers. And I know he worked a lot with one of our other club members at the time, Byron Dougherty, who had actually, it was kind of rare for people to have a computer at the time, and he actually had a personal computer, and he had the software to kind of do a layout of the magazine. And that kind of really took it from a couple of sheets that were copied on the copy machine up to something that is, of printing on quality paper that was turning into something that was setting ourselves above some of the other Fiero clubs.
And we did, I think it was a year ago, we did a podcast with the Fiero Focus team.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys want to know more about Fiero Focus and the magazine itself and the team that helps put that together, I think it's episode number 2 on our podcast list. But it's something that has grown tremendously over the many years. If you could go back and look at it, what it is now to then, when was that first technical issue, like the very first one, mailed out? And was it bi-monthly or was it?
Yeah, it's always been bi-monthly, which is good because it takes an effort of there's about 8 people that are really involved with putting together each issue. In the beginning, it was primarily just myself and another gentleman, and eventually it just started to grow, and it just got to be too much for one person. So in the early 2000s, I decided to expand it to a team of 8 people that would handle some of the proofing. Some of the people would handle, formatting the articles. Other people would handle writing the articles, and we, just kind of grew from a one-person team into a huge coordination between 8 people. But during that time, so as far as when that started to happen, I'm going to say late 1990s, because I know by the early 2000s we were ready to go with like a full color front cover and back cover. So it, as Byron brought us, from adding a lot of graphics and adding a lot of additional content and kind of really making it a professional-looking newsletter. Into Fiero Focus magazine. That was probably about 97 to maybe 2000, 2001.
Yeah, and it has grown tenfold too. And do you think that's the number one main communication between I'll say, club and everybody in the 47 states and 5 countries?
Yeah.
Do you think that's like the main thing, or is it the content that that they have that same, they found somebody that has the same enthusiasm that they have, and they can expand on that?
Yeah. And going back to that comment of Jim Corbin about the only way to reach every single club member is through your newsletter and or magazine. I wholeheartedly believe that the only reason we have so many club members is because of Fiero Focus magazine, and we put a lot of time and effort into that. And I think it's interesting in this day and age with all the digital magazines going out, and all of the internet and Facebook and all the technological things that are going on, that here we still have over 370 Fiero owners that are considered active Fiero owners, and they still want to get a bi-monthly magazine in their mailbox every other month.
Yeah. It's the sense of actually holding something too, and reading it.
I know many, and you can attest to this, Mike, because you've been a board member for quite some time. We've had many conversations about is it time to scrap the hard copy version? And time and time again, we've probably gone over this, probably at least 6 times in the last maybe 10 to 15 years. And each time we come back and say, what, if people weren't interested in receiving a hard copy magazine, we still would not be getting new memberships.
Yeah. There's just something about holding a magazine versus sitting in front of a computer or holding your phone. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe it's just turning the pages.
Yeah,
and just that consistency.
And it requires you, in a way, it requires you to pay attention to it during that time, because when you're on your computer reading a magazine, an email pops up and you're like, oh, got to check that email out, or you want to say, hey, I'm reading this, and something else distracts you, and all of a sudden you're Googling something on the internet. And this way, if you're focused on just reading the magazine, that's all you're doing.
Exactly.
You're just focused on that, which again, kind of leads to our title, believe it or not, Fiero Focus.
At what point did you guys see an increase of membership outside of Illinois once the magazine, or from that transition from a newsletter to an actual magazine?
Mm-hmm.
When did you see that jump of outside Illinois membership?
Yeah, if I had to guess, I'm gonna say probably in the early to mid 2000s, because as I mentioned before, there was at least one Fiero club in every single state in the U.S. And as people started to become president, and they were president for 10 years, and no one else wanted to step up to the plate, and they're all like, you know what? It's time for me to throw in the towel and call it quits to this, because they're not getting new members. So a lot of the smaller Fiero clubs in some of the smaller states or less populated states really started to die off quickly, probably in the early to mid 2000s. And I think as that started to happen, more people were still thriving and thirsting for more Fiero information, so they just kept on gravitating towards consistency. And a club that has been around for over at that time 15 years or so, and they just wanted to make sure that they still were connected to that Fiero community, and Fiero Focus magazine still allow them to do that.
And kind of jumping a little bit, but we've had tech tips in there. We've had the Bartemeyer Bits, who really goes deep into the Pontiac Fiero history.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the most geared towards sought after information in Fiero Focus?
I think time and time again, we've always made it a goal to make sure that we have at least one technical article in each issue. And I would have to say a majority of our readers enjoy the technical articles in it. And we've had many technical authors over the years. Currently we have Ray Dearson, we had Christopher Sass, and we had Ryan Gick, and all these different individuals that are very talented in writing technical articles for what I would consider the layman, the people that are not the trained mechanics. And you can read some of Ray Dearson's current articles, and it's like, okay, I think I can do this. He kind of gives you that confidence that, don't be scared of it, just go ahead and try it.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. And I think, but another aspect of Fiero Focus magazine is that, it's got a blend of a lot of stuff in it. It's got, activities which pertains to the local members. It's got information in the president's message and membership messages. And then, recently over the past, 15, 20 years or so, we've always had a feature article which highlights, one specific event, or highlights one specific club member, or something, that's very pertinent about the Fiero. And so I'd have to say that, it might be a toss-up between either the tech articles or the feature articles are probably the most to look forward to, but I think the entire issue as a whole, people enjoy reading from cover to cover.
Oh, very nice. So, but yeah, we'll probably have more discussion on Fiero Focus in depth in the future, but you brought up another good point of events and meetings, and over the years, have you noticed that there's certain meetings have a high percentage of attendance versus certain meetings that are low? Is it the indoor meetings? Is it outdoor at location meetings? What's kind of started that rolling as far as what type of meetings you're going to do? Was it based on attendance? Was it just based on ideas?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know let's separate Fiorama from that, because we'll talk about that a little bit later, but obviously Fiorama is a huge event for us. But, as you were posing that question, the first thing that popped in my head was the V8 Archie open houses that we had years ago.
Yeah, I remember those.
I mean, those were, those I think were the first time, aside from Fiorama, that we ever hit, 30 to 40 to 50 club members attending those. And, during those years, Archie kind of planned it out that he would have something to introduce to our club members during the V8 Archie open house. He was, at that time, he was coming up with all these different kit cars, and he had some really great, talented, body guys working for him. And, every year we would go there, it's like, okay, what are we going to see this year? And we got introduced, firsthand before anybody.
It was always a surprise too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he would have something, underneath the cover, and he would, unveil this thing, and it would be a Fiero-based GT40, or it was the Stinger, or, it was the Pheno or the Finale kit cars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was always something that he loved those meetings. I mean, he could not wait for those meetings to take place.
Yeah.
And, I know that, having moved out, but still involved with the Fiero, I know, moving out to Nevada, he misses that, but I know he really, really enjoyed those meetings.
Yeah, we enjoyed those and loved those as well. So, I mean, those were some of probably the most impressive ones that I've ever been at.
Mm-hmm.
And just, looking at those and like, that's my dream car right
Yeah,
there.
yep. And a lot of times, I remember, as you mentioned, that Archie would always say that. I mean, his job is about dreams. It's about what you dream about. And if you're a Fiero fan, he was producing what you dreamed about. More powers. You wanted a V8 Fiero. More modern looks. So you went with a Pheno or a Finale kit car. I mean, he was about, the suicide doors.
Yep.
I mean, it was all stuff, the chop tops. I mean, all these things were introduced, specifically to our club members at a V8 Archie open house.
Yeah, those are meetings that I'll never forget. It was one of a kind stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
But, as far as planning goes, a lot of the times as we get together as board members, we, hash out, okay, so what are we going to do for whatever our, March club meeting this year? And we started out, well in advance to give us some time so that we're not just discussing it and throwing something together. So like maybe in November or December, we start saying, okay, we need to start thinking about, what we're going to do in March. And we hash out some ideas, and then we table it. And then the next meeting comes up and it says, okay, last meeting we talked about these things. Do we want to cross any of these off the list, or do we want to expand on any of these? And we've had a decent success rate with having, like where we have a couple of segments during a club meeting, where we have maybe 2 or 3 different club members come in and talk about, various aspects, different topics, and not just one topic. That way, if you are interested in one topic, then you're going to go forth and continue on with, several other topics. If you just want to come and hear one, you're going to hear all 3 because it's a continuous meeting from start to finish. So, that kind of expanded the popularity of the club meetings, so that, again, if you're interested in maintaining your Fiero yourself, you're going to be introduced to other club members that know about these aspects of the Fiero, and you can converse with them and interact with them to help you, solve your Fiero problems.
Where were some of the early on meetings held, and even looking at meetings now? Were they at somebody's house, a restaurant, library?
Yeah, the first club meetings, many years, our club meetings were at it was the Union Church in Hinsdale, and the reason we got tied to that is one of our founding members was actually a maintenance manager at the Union Church in Hinsdale, so he kind of gave us, access to that building during, after hours from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. when our first meetings took place. So we went from the Union Church in Hinsdale, then we got tied in a lot with libraries. To kind of grow participation, we decided that, we wanted to change the timing of the meetings from an evening, from a weekday evening, after you come home from work from 7 to 9, we decided, well, why don't we try it on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon? So that kind of allowed us to change our meeting locations, and we met at some of the various libraries in the area of Northern Illinois. Had many of our meetings at the Lyle Library, as I lived there, and Paul Vargas lived there, so we had easy access to that. But it was nice because that allowed us to use some of the AV equipment, so we could have presentations, PowerPoint presentations, and tables and places to sit for the club members, and just kind of lay things out so that if you're going to talk about something and you need 17 different parts to talk about it, you could have the whole thing all laid out in that room and help people better understand about the workings of the Pontiac Fiero.
Yeah, even
So-
now, we've got the meetings that start at 10 and go until about noon with a lunch after. And I think that's helped out tremendously because it doesn't tie up your whole day.
Mhm,
You,
yep.
you do the event or the meeting in the morning, and that still leaves your afternoon and evening
Yeah.
wide
yep.
open. So
Yeah,
I-
that was something that we recently changed in kind of changing the format. We used to have it in the afternoon, and we said, well, what if we had it in the morning, and that way your whole afternoon is up to you. You don't have to kind of try something in the morning, but then you're in the midst of something, and it's like, well, now I want to leave now because I want to get to the Fiero Club meeting at 1 o'clock. This way we just started at the 10 o'clock in the morning and 10 to 12, and then if you want to stick around for lunch afterwards, you can. If you got to go home and mow the lawn or rake the leaves, you can do that too.
What was the overall membership presence at some of the early on meetings between 91 and 96?
Those, again, because just we had 100 or so club members, we were probably just approaching or just hit over 100 club members. Some of those probably had maybe 15 to 20 club members attend, which percentage-wise, that's really not that bad.
And the reason I'm asking is in 96, September, was it June or September of 96 when you guys started Fiorama? And
June
yeah.
of 96.
And was it based on just the overall, okay, we've got this many people, let's kind of form our show and invite everybody? What was the basis between the club presence and leading up to that decision in June of 96 to have a club-owned car show?
Mm-hmm. Again, following the formats of a lot of the other Fiero clubs across the U.S., I mean, a lot of the other clubs were having their own show. I mean, the Dells Run started in 92. The Michigan Fiero Club had their club annual car show. I think they started theirs in probably 95 or 96. So a lot of the other clubs were having their own show, and we figured, well, you know what, we're going to these other clubs and enjoying their show. We should kind of reciprocate that favor and have those clubs come to our show, and kind of that way they're throwing a party for us and we attend, we throw a party for them, and then they get to attend. So I think it was actually at our Christmas party in 1995. We were just kind of hashing out the idea, and somebody popped the question saying, well, why don't we have our own car show? And, thinking back on that, I was probably like, oh, wow, that sounds like a lot of work. But, at the time, it was like, well, we are enjoying other people's, the fruits of other people's labors. We have to put in our labor ourselves, and that way other people get to enjoy the fruits of our labor.
When did you guys decide to move it from the June to September?
The first year we held Fiorama was in June of 96, and it was kind of tough to determine a date at that point, and it was very, because all these other Fiero clubs were having club events, and obviously the only time to have these shows is from, either from May, June, July, August, September, and you only have a certain number of months, and we decided, well, let's go ahead and have ours in June. We decided to do that the first year, and I think because of all the other activities that our club members were involved with, at that time you could go to the Dells Run in early, late May or early June. The Michigan Fiero Club was having their show, I think, late June or early July. We figured, that's too populated of a time. We needed to give people more time in between the activities. So after we did that first one in June, we decided, well, it's still nice late September, or I'm sorry, early in September, kind of late in the car show season. Why don't we go ahead and lock in our own date? We wouldn't have much conflict if we chose, the weekend after Labor Day. So we decided that second year in September that Fiorama would be the Saturday, or actually the Sunday after Labor Day weekend. And we've stuck with that ever since, and it's, it has actually turned in the Midwest Fiero community, it's turned into the final Fiero show of the year.
How big was the first one? I know now we average about 70 to 80 cars.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we've been doing 70 to 80 cars. The first Fiorama, I believe it was a total of just under 70. I think it was like 67 Fieros at that first show. And the interesting thing about Fiorama 1 was I think all the board members and I were kind of nervous. We didn't really, want to have something go awry with all of our planning, so we decided, we're not going to invite any of the other Fiero clubs to play in our show the first year in June. And we also wanted to see, how involved all of our club members were in our own club. So we decided to have Fiorama number 1 just for members of NIFE. And, we had, like I said, close to 67 club members, and I'm guessing at that time we probably had, maybe total 150 club members. So that was a huge show up at that first year. And like, at that second year we said, well, we had all the bugs worked out, and it's time to have our party for all the rest of the Fiero owners around the Midwest and across the U.S. if they wanted to participate. And, the numbers climbed from, that 60 to 70 in the early years. I think we've had as many as 135 or 136 at our biggest one. And now we're averaging probably in the mid 70s to low 80s over the past 5 or so years.
How long would you say it takes to plan for a show?
For Fiorama, we generally, I'm thinking of a total time. It probably takes about board meeting wise, probably about 3 to 4 board meetings. We talk about it a lot because there's a lot of pre-planning that needs to take place. In January, we talk about, real basic stuff about, determining the date and making sure that we have the Potawatomi Park location locked in. And, that's really all you can talk about at that time frame. But come, March, come April, come May, that's when a lot of the things start to get solidified as far as a theme goes. We always want to have our Fiorama announcement flyer at the Dells run, meaning that we have to have our theme ready to go. We have to have our event logo ready to go by the end of May so that we can pass out those flyers. And then we really start to get heavy into Fiorama planning probably June, July, and August.
Has over the years, has the location played a big decision in Fiorama?
The first few Fioramas actually took place in Darien, Illinois, at a huge parking lot that, and the main reason we selected that parking lot was because it was a major intersection in the Downers Grove, Darien, Illinois area. And what we wanted to do was kind of see how much foot traffic we could get to help promote the Fiero and promote the club itself. So we started out at that location. I'm not really sure how much traffic we had come in and just kind of look at the cars. But over time, we actually moved to another second location in Oak Brook, Illinois. And the reason for that was because the Cruise and Tigers GTO club had their show at that location, and it made it very convenient because there was a McDonald's restaurant right next door. So we didn't have to worry about where to get food from. It was a lot easier to go, to walk across the parking lot and have lunch and then come back to the car show, or pick up lunch and bring it back to the car show. Versus at our first location, we were associated with a Home Run Inn Pizza restaurant, and that wasn't really convenient for a quick type meal because, they had to order the pizza and stuff like that. So I think it opened up a lot of opportunities for, expanding the show and different types of promotion, although it wasn't along a busy traffic area. It was kind of in a secluded business office parking lot, but it allowed us to be more convenience oriented, let's say, to club members so that they could get, nourishment and food during the day.
Well, we'll talk more about Fiorama in a few, but I want to jump to another event that N.I.F E has partook in, and that is one that kind of got the club name out there a little bit more. The event is the World of Wheels that was held at McCormick Place in Chicago, and that kind of put a big footprint on the club when the club participated in, I think it was the Windy City Challenge. But what was the main reason of getting involved with the World of Wheels?
The origin of that was one of our club members, Lothar Bacher. He was one of the first Fiero owners to put a North Star V8 engine in his Fiero. And he was heavily into showing that car, and he got involved with the World of Wheels, which is a custom car show. And he got very enthused because he participated in that show probably in like 98 and 99, and he got trophies for his car at that show. And after, he would tell, him and I would talk, and he would write articles about his car for Fiero Focus magazine, and we just started talking about it, and I think he was the one that initially provided us with the invitation and told us that, there's this Windy City Club Challenge that we might want to participate in, and what that is a challenge to car clubs to kind of have a display setup of some of your, club members' cars so that, you could be judged on a club display on a kind of a regional, if not a national level.
And one of them was a racing theme, if I remember right.
Correct. Yep. The first time we participated was in 2000. In 2004 was the Indy 500 theme that we had. So we started out pretty basic, but and thank you, Mike, for bringing this back to my memory, because I had to dig through some stuff here to come up with some of this World of Wheels stuff. But I was looking back. This was during that V8 Archie time frame where, V8 Fieros and custom Fieros were the big, huge thing in the Fiero community. And these again were venues where V8 Archie would do some magnificent debuts of different things that he was working on.
I remember the Stinger was the
The
first
Stinger
time
was,
yeah.
yep, the Stinger was there. The the GT40 was there. There was just so much going on in the custom Fiero community, and V8 Fieros were just huge that we just decided, you know what, we have so many customized Fieros in our club. Let's show off some of the best that we have to the Chicago area. So we had, each of these, each of the times we participated in this, we had, 4, 5, 6 custom Fieros in these, from V8 conversions to full body conversions to 3800 conversions, all the things that were very hot back in the early 2000s.
I think if I remember right, we had the Aldino, we had the Stinger, we had Dave Bagwell's Predator,
Yep.
Lothar's North Star. There was a couple other ones that I remember that I just not coming to me, but we tied them in with the pace car too. That it was kind of like they were being a pace lap around Indy.
Yeah, during that last one is we got the itch as we took third place in the Windy City Club Challenge, and I think it was 2002 and 2003 that we decided for 2004 we were going to pull out all the stops we could and do what we can to get first place in that challenge. I think there was like a $2,000 award for the first place. So we figured, if we won anything, we could use that to kind of invest in the full display for the following year. So in 2003, I think it was, is when we won $500, which we said, okay, we're going to use that $500 to really do what we can to get first place in 2004, and that's when we came up with the Indy racetrack theme. So we had, one of the main things about doing this was not really for the purpose of winning. It was a lot to do with exposure for the club and exposure for the Fiero, because one of our goals of the club is to positively promote the Fiero. And here we have a bunch of car enthusiasts in the dead of winter that come out and look at customized cars, and hey, let them know what the Fiero is capable of.
Yeah.
That was really what it was all about.
Would the club consider doing another one? I know they've moved out of McCormick Place. They're in the Donald D. Stevenson Center now. I don't even know if they still do the Windy City Challenge, but would that be a possibility? And I know it's now, I think it's March, April that they do it now. Would it be a possibility for going at it again?
Yeah, two things about that is I know one of the detriments after 2004, after 2004's participation was, a lot of the difficulties of this event was that it takes place in January in Chicago. You have no idea what the weather's going to be like, and many times, you'd be fighting, okay, is it going to be snowing the day that I go in? And then you have to worry about cleaning all the salt off of your car, or you have to trailer it in, and there were long lines of waiting to get your car into the venue, because there was only like one or two doors that allowed you to gain access into the building. So that was one of the detriments. And I think after those 2000 to 2004 years, we said, what, it was fun, but this is getting tiring. So I know, if I'm not sure if they do, we'd have to check and see if they still do have any type of a club challenge. But maybe it is something that we want to pursue again. One of the since it is a custom car show, it is getting harder and harder to find true custom Fieros like we had in the early 2000s. A lot of those cars have gone to other owners outside of Illinois. You look at some of the cars at Fiorama. I mean, the custom classes are still populated, but they are not populated like they were in the early 2000s.
It's more going back to the low mileage and the restorations and the restores.
Yeah, yep. So it might, it's something we can take a look at, but it might be kind of hard to come up with, six customized Fieros that are willing to participate in an event like that. So we'll have to see.
All right. Well, we're going to jump to events, but I just wanted to say one thing. If you're looking for something for that special someone and not sure what to get them, we're going into that holiday season. It's time to visit the NIFE store for all of your club merchandise needs for the season. The store offers a range of items from the Enthusiast Guide to the Pontiac Fiero, sweatshirts, t-shirts, ECM code readers, and by supporting and purchasing items from the NIFE store, you're supporting the club as well as promoting the club. By doing this, you'll help keep Fiorama free to its members, help in supporting local charities, and also help offset costs for printing club flyers and other printed materials throughout the year. So click on FieroFocus.com, then slide over to the store tab and check out all the merchandise available for purchase and help support your club today. That's FieroFocus.com/store. All right, moving over to events now. So over the years, N.I.F.E has done many events, more than I can even count. Do you feel that the membership has grown based on the events and Fiero Focus magazine?
If I had to guess, I would say grown in a different, there are two different ways to grow. The club meetings, I think, that we have every month in November through usually March, April, May-ish timeframe. I think those allow the club membership to grow personally, meaning that you get to interact with your fellow club members. Fiero Focus magazine obviously helps the club grow in a different way in terms of depth of membership across the U.S. and across the world. But I still think it's important for members to participate in local club events, because that's when you get to interact with people and learn, maybe help you out with a problem that you're having with your Fiero, or gain access to customization ideas that yourself, like you, Mike, and your custom Fiero, you get to show that off to other club members, and they might have different inspirations and take your ideas and apply them to their own Fiero.
Exactly. And I've kind of looked at it the same way as I've looked at other custom Fieros. I'm like, oh, I can do something like that and modify it to my the way I have presented in the car. Besides the V8 Archie open houses and events, what are some of the events that have really stood out to you over the years?
Yeah, I think the V8 Archie open houses, as you mentioned, looking back, I haven't really paid much attention to the World of Wheels Windy City Challenge. That obviously was a huge thing that the club participated in, and we had a lot of club members that came out to look at the display, and a lot of volunteers that participated in those displays. We had hoped, I think, to get like 14 volunteers to kind of staff the club display during those Windy City Challenge years. But some of the club meetings that stand out, obviously a lot with the guest speakers. I know, being a big detailing fan, there were a couple of times that we had a representative from McGuire's come out, and the first time he came out, I mean, that's when I really started to get sold on the McGuire's products, and not trying to promote them here, but McGuire's is the only thing that I use on my car, because they have virtually anything that you need in order to maintain, preserve, and make your Fiero the best that it can be. And I remember, some of those detailing meetings that we had, which we haven't had some in quite a while. A lot of those, you learn a lot of tricks during those meetings from people that are experts in detailing, and it's just neat to learn about the products that they promote, that they use, and how to use them, and just gaining access to that kind of information. So a lot of the guest speakers that come out, some of the other club meetings, a lot of the technical ones. I know our club members are always technically based and wanted to learn more about the car. So a lot of the times when Nick DeMonte comes out, Nick's a very knowledgeable club member, technically wise, because he restored his own Fiero, so he's got a lot of in-depth knowledge that he is very willing to share with our club members, and he has done a lot of meetings, and those are always interesting meetings for me.
Yeah, and even the impromptu ones like we had last year at Fiorama, that was John Caparo, and he was a special guest at Fiorama, and it was pretty interesting to kind of have an impromptu club meeting where he discussed what he did for GM and how he worked on the Fiero and stuff like that too. So you never know what's going to happen. You never know who's going to show up, and you could have some pretty good surprises. So
yeah, yep.
Have you thought of redoing some of those past events or meetings that really got a lot of traction? So, and kind of update them to if something that you guys had meetings of maybe 10, 15 years ago, updated them and say, okay, well, based on 15 years ago, this is what's changed, and this is how we're going to present it now.
Yeah, that's something that we really should start taking a look at is, what have we done in the past? Something that I know we recently talked about at one of our board meetings was it's been a while since we've done a segment on tire options, tire and wheel options for the Fiero. And, there's a lot of knowledgeable people out there that can talk about tires and wheels, and, it just helps members, better understand their car, so that when they go into a mechanic that, tells them something, they can think back in their mind saying, what, that just doesn't sound right to me. I don't know if this is the right place to take my Fiero, Or like tire options, if somebody starts talking about something that maybe they learned in a club meeting, watch out for this. If somebody starts steering you in the wrong direction, you can say, well, okay, thank you for your time. I'll continue shopping, But, having club meetings, I think, really helps out our membership, and, helps them learn about the car. And, the people that we bring to the club meetings, the guest speakers, we've always had great success with finding the right people for the right subject matter.
And I completely agree on that too. And everything's been very knowledgeable over the many years. N.I.F.E has also participated in events outside of Illinois. We were able to visit the GM Heritage Center. We go to the Dells Run every year. Great event. It's even though it changes every year, and you meet new people, but you always see those same faces. And I think that's what is fun about that event is it's a consistent, constant, and that's fun for that. We've done the Geneva Swedish Days Parade. People have asked this year if we would want to partake in a parade again, and just looking at the different villages and cities that do parades, there might be some future in on that again. We've gone to the Bolo Auto Museum. We've seen the world's largest telescope in Williams Bay, Wisconsin, off Lake Geneva. We've driven down Route 66, and it's those events that I think also attract the members and the participation, not only from Illinois but all over. And because we see stuff that you don't see every day, and it's not something that you do every year.
Mm-hmm.
It's events that I think take the club to the next level. And it's not just we sit in a restaurant or a library every month. We get out there, we drive the cars,
Mm-hmm.
we go to cruises, and I think that's what helps. And it is something that you get to really enjoy the car when you can.
And going along that theme, I think one of the interesting things is the way we have the events calendar set up. That obviously you're not going to do a car show during the winter months, November through May. So that's when we do our indoor club meetings, and then during the summer months, that's when we do the outdoor car shows and cruise nights. So that if you're not a club meeting kind of guy, you get to participate in the summer events, and if you're not a car show kind of guy, you get to participate in the winter events. And consistently you see these club members. You only see them in the wintertime because they only come to the club meetings, and then you only see other club members in the summertime because they only like to do car shows and cruise nights. But it's nice that there is that blend, that we're not just all about club meetings, or we're not just about car shows in the summertime. We try to do what we can to hit as many club members and different aspects, different ways to enjoy the Fiero as possible.
Yeah, and even the fall color tours and spring driving tours, and just a couple of weeks ago we did the Mecum auction, and that was a unique experience in itself because you got to see some barn finds.
Yeah,
and you got to see celebrity owned. I think one car when we were there, fetched $130,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then even like the barn finds, we're like, oh, that's gonna be like a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 car, and it sold for what, 30-some thousand?
Yeah, $30,000 for a '57 Corvette that was like barely recognizable as a Corvette.
Exactly. So, how are the events decided? Is it a group effort, or is it an individual that says, hey, I think this would be kind of interesting, can you guys see if you can do an event like that? What's the event backlog of stuff, if there is one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of the events generally take probably, let's say, 3 to 4 months of planning to come to fruition. So we start out with an idea of what we might want to do for, let's say, the April club meeting, and we hash out some ideas. With the board members, it's really not one individual, but it's kind of a consensus type meeting that we have at our board meetings, where we want everyone's input and suggestions about what might work, what might not work, different ideas of things that we should try, and so it's not a quick and easy last minute decision. There's a lot of thought that goes into all of our club events. And it's a lot of input from club members to make sure that we have different aspects covered, that we have different ideas from the different board members' input, and making sure that everyone is going to be doing the best that we possibly can to make sure that this event is as successful as possible.
Have you always kept it basically ending in October with outdoor events for the fall color tour, and then keeping November, December, January, February, March, and even almost April, the winter months?
Yeah, I think that's been the way it's, wow. I'm going to have to say at least since maybe not the first 5 years of the club, but I would say everything else has pretty much been that same kind of format. I know the fall color tour, that probably started, if I had to guess, probably about 93 or 94 when we had our first fall color tour. And, we've done one ever since, just because it's a nice final drive at the end of the year, and there's so many different things we can do in October just to kind of get outside one last time and hopefully enjoy some warm weather. I know over the many years that we've done the fall color tours, we've had perfect sunny days in the 70s. We've had snow, we've had rain, we've had high winds. We used to actually do a kind of a full day event where we would leave in the morning and come back at 6 or 7 o'clock after dinner. We'd have a lunch, and we'd also have a dinner. We decided that with everyone's busy schedules now, maybe to scale that back, so we kind of do just a morning and a lunch type of an event, and that's been pretty successful for us with, like this past October when we went to Woodstock, Illinois. We had 25 club members there. It's a nice way to spend a Saturday afternoon and learn something about the area that we live in.
Yeah. And Woodstock has a lot of history too.
Mm-hmm.
In that. What are some of the topics that are discussed at some of the indoor club meetings?
A lot of technical stuff, like rebuilding alternators, changing your coolant in a Fiero, and all the special techniques that are involved with changing your coolant. We've talked about tires. We've talked about upgrades. We had one of the other meetings that stands out to me is when we had 3 of our customized Fiero club members come out and talk about their version of a customized Fiero. We had a full-blown rebody. We've had a 3800 engine conversion, and we talked about what is a personalized Fiero, and the consensus was it's really whatever you want it to be. I mean, everybody's interpretation of what they want their Fiero to be is different. Some people want to do a mild custom, some people want to do an all-out V8 Archie conversion with full body kit, and I'm thinking of the Lamborghini Lambero that attends Fiorama, and a lot of the work that went into that car and made it the car that it was and is. There's just a lot of effort that people put into their cars, and it's nice that they have a chance to talk about that in front of a group of other like-minded people at some of our club meetings.
Yeah. What would you consider as one of the biggest, outside of the big Fiorama 10 where we had most, if not all, of the prototypes, what would you say is the biggest event that N.I.F. has had, whether indoor or outdoor?
Aside from Fiorama?
Yeah.
I think participation-wise, something we mentioned earlier, I think the V8 Archie open houses. Those were really the first time that our club had ever hit, at one meeting, aside from Fiorama, at one event. I think we even had as many as over 60 to 65 people at some of those V8 Archie open houses. I mean, people just love to go there and just dream about what they could do to their Fiero.
Yeah, if we could, I would go back and would love to kind of sit through those again. That was something.
Yeah. And it was fun, because people, just came out and they learned what they could do, to their Fiero, if depending upon what your budget was. I remember one of the questions that Archie always had was, people would say, well, how fast can I make it go? And Archie's first response was, well, how much do you want to spend?
Which
that was
you would be expecting him to say, well, how fast do you want to go?
Yeah, it's, however much you want to spend, that's how fast he can make it go. So, But he always loved those meetings, and I'm sure that he misses them as much as we do.
Yep, I agree. All right, as we move on, we can't do this without the help and support of our vendors. So another one of our supporters and vendors is Bontour Solutions. Are you looking for that special personalized gift for someone in the car community or just in general? Bontour Solutions can help you find that one-of-a-kind gift. Anything from t-shirts, sweatshirts, drinkware, signs, decorative items, holiday items, and so much more. They can design pretty much anything you want them to do, from pictures of your car, your favorite sports team, a pet, or any saying that you can think of that you want. The list is endless. Minimums are just one of each, and the best thing is, they waive the setup fees. You can catch Bontour Solutions at several Fiero and Pontiac events in the area, such as Fiorama, the Dells Run, the upcoming 40th anniversary show of the Pontiac Fiero, and the Indian Uprising Pontiac show in August. Feel free to visit their website at bontourgifts.web.com or give them a call at 847-453-3290 for more information. That's 847-453-3290. All right, as we start wrapping this up, the club has been around for 30 years. Did you ever expect in your wildest dreams that you would be the president and founder of a club that's been around for that long?
No, and in the early days, never really gave it thought. I just let it flow where the club just kind of grows. So I've never had any limitations on it, and I'm ecstatic that we've gone this far and we've been this successful and continue to be successful. And a lot of that is because of the the support of all of our board members. I mean, I know firsthand that this is not just me doing this. This is all of our board members throughout the many years. This is all of our Fiero-focused team members throughout the years. This is a group effort. Yes, I'm the leader of it, but this is really just a group effort. I come up with the ideas, and other people come up with the ideas, and we just have a lot of brainstorming together, and we just make this. Make all this work because we're all still enthusiastic about this car even after all this time.
Going into 2020, 2021, 2021 is the big 30th anniversary of the club. Any plans to celebrate?
I'm sure we will celebrate, but I have no idea what we're gonna do. And one of the many fun things about this club, as you know, Mike, is that this is kind of an opportunity for all of us just to kind of feel like there's no limits to what we can do. I mean, some of the themes that you've come up with and some of the themes that we elaborate, I mean, it's just fun coming up with all this stuff. As someone comes up with one little idea and it just expounds exponentially as it continues to be discussed during these board meetings, and when we have something to present, it is like magnificent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the club can't keep going like this without the support and the volunteers of everybody in the Fiero community and the local members too. So, they're the ones that help keep everything going. And now that we're in 47 to 50 states, everybody's keeping us up and on our toes and running. Big question, what has Jenny thought of all this over the last 30 plus years?
It's interesting. One of the other origination stories of the club is back on that Saturday, October 19th, 1991, was obviously a huge day for me because it started the club. But that evening, I went out on a blind date with where I first met Jenny. And she's never known me without being associated with the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts. So I know she's very supportive of it. She knows that I enjoy it, but as she says, she always knows where I'm at. Either I'm on the computer doing Fiero Club stuff, or I'm at a Fiero Club meeting, or I'm talking Fieros with somebody, or I'm working on the Fiero in our garage. But she's, very supportive, and she knows that I enjoy it. And the interesting thing is that she has met so many wonderful friends over the years that I know she enjoys going to a lot of the club functions just as much as I do.
Yeah.
So,
And that's one thing too, is the club not only has events for its members, and it also includes the spouses and the girlfriends and the sisters or the brothers. It includes everybody.
yeah.
And that's what's really nice about it.
Yeah, I mean, we've really grown, and I have said this time and time again to a lot of people, is that, in the early years of the Fiero community, we were all about, wow, whose car got the most number of trophies? And as we continued to hang out with one another, really the car shows have just become a reason for us to get together, and it really doesn't matter who got the trophy or not.
Yeah.
It's about visiting with your friends that, like at the Dells Run, people that you haven't seen since Fiorama the year before. And, you catch up, or, you talk with them and further learn about them. And, time and time again, as people come from the outside of the Fiero community and see how we operate and work, it's a living being all on its own, where, you can have somebody that has a Fiero problem, and, someone in the club, whether it's myself or someone else, is going to do their best to try and help that individual. It's not like, well, so sorry, figure it out yourself and you drive away. I mean, there's like a hound of people that just kind of come around and say, hey, what can I do to help? Or here's what you might want to try. And we're all out here to help one another. And we all work together to do that for one another. It's not like we're just a bunch of individuals.
Exactly. And I'm going to jump here for a second, but that happened to me, probably almost 20 years ago, when my timing gear broke. And I took it to a local shop, and they did nothing but tear the car apart. And they didn't know what they were doing. They were struggling. They gave up. They put the car back together and said, here you go. I took it. I drove maybe a block away to get a bite to eat, and left. And I had probably a 24 by 24 inch puddle of oil under the car. And went back to them, and they're like, sorry, we're done with the car. We don't want to touch it anymore. I made a few calls the next day, and the membership came together and said, yeah, let me make some calls. They called Bob Steiger and said where the car was. He drove up with his tow truck, picked the car up, took it back down to his shop, put it back together, and all he said was, just reimburse me for the tow, $75.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take care of everything else.
Wow.
And I want to say about a week or so later, he said, it's done, you can come get it. So that's exactly I look at it as a family versus a community.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah, we're all very close. We're very supportive of one another. And as you mentioned, when John Cafaro came to Fiorama last year, I mean, that was the first thing that he noticed. I mean, all of these big GM people that have been involved with the Fiero back in the day, when they come and see what we are and how we operate, every single one of them has been amazed, saying that, you guys are really a top-notch organization because we support one another. We're not out to outdo one another. Yep. Nobody outdoes anyone else in the Fiero community. I mean, we all do different things. We all do different things in our own way, and everybody respects that. Nobody says, my car is better than your car is better than my car. We all appreciate their Fiero for what it is, and how they want to have it is exactly how they want to have it, and we're okay with that.
And I think that's the legacy that N.I.F.E is going to leave behind, too, is we're all in it together. Nobody's better than the other. We're all equal.
Mm-hmm.
Last big question for you. Do you see yourself retiring as a club president, or would you continue? And maybe take some time off? Where do you see yourself in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
Well, Mike, being 52 years old, my guess is I'm probably going to be club president for the rest of my existence, although I am always looking for, I occasionally think about, okay, so where's this club going to be when I'm gone? Because obviously I'm not going to be around forever, and I know a lot of us have put a lot of heart and soul into this club, and it's something that I don't worry about, but it's something that, I do think about. What's going to happen after I'm gone, and one of the ways that I kind of test that water is, maybe about every 10 years or so, I do take some time off. I take a 1-year sabbatical, and I can't eliminate myself from the club, but I do kind of step back and just make sure that the club will operate, when I'm not able to make it operate. And I do less with the club, and it's also during that time is when I realize that there's things that I can take off of my plate that can be passed on to other board members or other club members' plates, because over time you just continue gathering things, and maybe some things do go to the wayside, but a lot of the times you just keep on accumulating more activities and more responsibilities with things, and it's nice to take that time off and say, I need to reevaluate stuff and kind of decide what's important, what's not important, what do we need to do, what do we not need to do, and kind of move that stuff to other plates, or just decide that it's not needed for the club to function anymore. So I'm envisioning myself, always being the founder and the club president, but we'll have to see what happens after I'm gone, and I certainly hope, and I firmly believe that the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts will continue after I'm gone.
I agree. I think it will. And it's a very well put together club, and I think it's something that as long as the Fiero's around, I think the club will be around.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
Well, thank you for your time tonight. It's been a blast, hearing about all the past and stuff like that. One of the segments that we weren't able to get to tonight was the big Fiorama, but we're going to save that for another one, because that's a podcast in itself.
It sure is.
Yeah, we'll have a lot more information and behind the story and all the behind the scenes work on that as well. So I just want to remind everybody that this is a seasonal podcast that we're going to be doing between October and March/April, depending on how things go. I want to thank everybody for listening, and a big thank you to today's guest, Jim Hallman, the founder and president of the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts. You can find all the podcasts and the future podcasts on our website at FieroFocus.com. And again, some of the future ones that we're going to be doing are the original Fiero owners, the ladies of N.I.F E, tech discussions, what is the enthusiast guide to the Pontiac Fiero, and then a little bit more information on the Midwest Fiero clubs. So again, you can find all the information and everything at the Fiero's, our FieroFocus.com, Fiero Focus Magazine, our 2 Facebook pages at N.I.F E Club and at Fiorama. I want to thank the Fiero store, the N.I.F.E store, and Bonthurst Solutions again. Thank you very much. We can't do everything and on our Fieros without you guys. So if you'd like more information or have any ideas on future casts, you can email me at mcroyer, that's MKROYER, at FieroFocus.com. Thank you again, Jim. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
And so long. Good night. And I'm going to take one out of your page book here. Keep Fieroing.